everyone, welcome to ETS Chalk Talk. We are up in Portland today with the Central Catholic 6A Oregon State champs. It's Coach Steve Pyne. Hey, Coach, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Doing well, man. It's fun kind of catching up beforehand about the great city of Portland. I know that before we get into the city, because it holds a special place in my heart, you guys had an outstanding 2019 season, and a couple weeks ago, you got to kind of have the culmination where you were out in the rain, passing out some state championship rings. Probably not the way you expected it to be, but talk to us about that experience. I know you, a bunch of coaches, were able to do that with your players.
Yeah, it was one of those things with COVID-19 that, we had planned on having a big celebration at the school, and bringing the parents and all that stuff. And then when this COVID hit, we kind of stole the idea. I saw it on Facebook with another program that ordered their rings through the same company that we did. And I was like, well, hey, I think that's something we can do. A little more challenging with a private school because you don't necessarily have a neighborhood and it's not an easy thing.
Yeah,
so
true.
For anybody who knows the Portland area, the Portland metropolitan area, I fell on the sword for all my other coaches. And we have a young man that lives out in North Plains, which is almost halfway to the beach from Portland.
Oh, dang.
So I drove out there, and then from there I went to Scappoose and St. Helens, and then up into Vancouver because we have some Washington kids on our team. And but it was a great experience seeing the kids get their rings, the parents' reactions, and it was a pretty special day. It was something those guys will remember forever.
Yeah.
On top of winning a state championship.
Yeah. Whenever there's been an interaction during this time, like even last night, we had my grandma's birthday. Whenever you see someone in the flesh who you're not living with, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. So I'm sure it was cool for those players to see their position coach or, their head coach take the time to drive all over the place. Portland's a really awesome city. I know that you're born and bred, and you coach in a school that's really, downtown almost.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us just about your love for Portland, what you like about it, what makes the city so special.
Well, I think it's just the people here are genuine. There's always people who have different opinions, and that's going to be anywhere you go. But I think that there's a lot of outreach in our city for the marginalized people in our community. I think the city itself, when you go downtown and you see all the bridges and the buildings and the architecture, it's a unique place. And when you just whether you're going to a restaurant or a theater or shopping or whatever, when you can do those things again, it's just fun to take in the scenery of Portland and just seeing the way that people get behind the athletics here, whether it's like we talked about the Timbers or the Thorns or the Trailblazers, and big movement to bring Major League Baseball to Portland, which would be awesome if that happens. So it's just a wonderful place to live and raise a family.
Yeah. What are you and your family most looking forward to once things open back up? Do you have a restaurant pegged or a place you're going to go grab a drink at?
I think that there's, kind of two places that I really enjoy. One's called the Screen Door, which is over by our school. It's kind of authentic Southern barbecue, chicken fried steak and waffles and that kind of stuff. That's really good. And then, one of our parents owns a place called Sandoval's, which is a Mexican restaurant, excellent Mexican restaurant. And so I'd be happy to get back to those couple places. I don't frequent bars very often, but so there's no real spot for that. But I'd like to be able to get back to my wife and I enjoy going to the theater and, seeing plays and that kind of thing, trying to get back to get into the Keller and watching some Broadway musicals and stuff like that will be fun.
Oh, nice, man. I read something this morning as well. If you want the small businesses you like to make it, you need to buy stuff from them right now,
Mm-hmm.
and takeout and that sort of thing. because it's trying times for a lot of businesses around there. What's it been like for just your program overall during this season? How have you guys been staying in touch, and just how are you trying to lead a program during something as unprecedented as this?
Well, I think probably the way most people are. I mean, we meet weekly with our kids on Zoom by position, go over installs and concepts and that kind of thing. Our strength and conditioning coach, he sends out workouts and videos every couple of weeks as we progress through, and he has workouts for those kids who have access to weights and workouts for those who don't. And our speed guy, our conditioning coach, does the same thing. He sends out workouts periodically, and the reality is, I think kids who are motivated are going to be finding ways to do things right.
Yeah.
And they want to be ready when the time comes for us to play, whether it's 8 weeks from now or 8 months from now, whatever it is, right? So those kids are motivated. The problem is, you always have those fringe kids that if they can be pulled along by a coach or pulled along by one of their teammates or friends, they benefit from that. But those guys might slip through the cracks, and that's one of my concerns coming back is how much time are we going to have to really prepare our kids physically to be ready for the grind of a 14-game season or a 10-game season or whatever it is, and that's concerning to me.
Yeah, yesterday I was driving by my alma mater, and I was thinking about that very thing because certain schools here have been able to start practice because maybe they're private, or maybe they're just in a district that said, yeah, you can go for it. And then other schools, which are maybe like 10 minutes away, but in a different district, are still not allowed to do it, or in a different county, but they'll play each other, are still not allowed to do it. And you talk about competitive equity, and like, how the heck is that going to work out where a team might have 2 or 3 weeks jump start on another program in a season like this where you haven't had the strength conditioning for a few months? Like 3 weeks is a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And I think that's what we're dealing with in Oregon is Multnomah County, where our school is located. We're not even in phase 1 yet. And actually yesterday, the governor pushed it back another week. And so we have all the other surrounding counties are preparing to go into phase 2. And so there's some equity issues, but my guess is I'm not going to get a lot of sympathy from our opponents.
No, not y'all. You mentioned Multnomah. Before we get into today's kind of conversation around relationships and culture and teaching life lessons, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, especially if my wife listens, that Portland is a special place for me. It's where I proposed to my wife at the top of Multnomah Falls. And we were talking earlier, it has some significance for you as well, right? You want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the Multnomah Falls is the location that was the first time I told my wife of 26 years that I loved her. And so it's a beautiful place that you know for sure. Just so serene and peaceful, and just it's really nice to have that right in our backyard.
Yeah, there are some crowds which I did not take into account as we're making our way up this hike, which is like, it's a short hike, but it's pretty steep.
Right.
So one, we're both sweating, so the pictures are like filled with pit stains. Two, my wife is very introverted, and she does not like crowds. But at that point, I'm like, you know what? We flew in last night for this. She still has no idea. I got to go for it. But it's a pretty crowded place because it's that spectacular. People haven't been. You got to go. And that drive out from downtown to the falls.
The gorge is phenomenal. Yeah.
Jeez.
It's God's country.
It is that beautiful. Well, let's get into, we were talking about like just this concept of, what are you most passionate about? Like what makes you do what you do? And you mentioned like, hey, it's literally developing relationships, which I think a lot of coaches might say. They might say like, hey, this is it. This is why I do it. But then in actuality, the way it's lived out or the way it's, communicated to their team is vastly different. So talk to me about like, why is this your passion, and how do you really live this out on the day-to-day throughout your coaching career?
Well, I think that, I think I've heard a lot of coaches say it, and I say it too. I think success on the field is a byproduct of developing young men with some core values. One of those being relationships in our program. And success on the field takes care of itself. You know, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. I want to see, as a coach, as a mentor, as a father, what are these kids going to look like in 10, 15, 20 years? And how have we touched their lives and impacted their lives so that they can be great husbands and fathers and community members and give back to the areas that they're in or the areas they came from? And, you know, I've been in this profession over 30 years. I've been a head coach for 21 years. And I can see those things based on the connections and the conversations and the relationships that have been developed over the years. I'm not foolhardy enough to think that we have hit every single kid at the same level, right? There's plenty of kids that have played for me or in our program that maybe didn't have a great experience, but if they took something away about their work ethic or about accepting their role on the team, we are hopeful that serves them in their life, because we can't all be the quarterback or the star. We all have a role to play. And if we can embrace that role and learn how to develop it and be the best that we can be to push ourselves to the next challenge, I think that's what the culture thing is for us. And that's why we put such an emphasis on it on a daily basis in our conversations. But there's some specific things that we do that try to hit home with kids and the conversations we have.
Yeah. When you have a kid come back, or when you start looking at kids you coached 10, 15, 20 years ago, were there steps along the way where, in viewing their development, you maybe looked at the way you were leading and thought, hey, you know what? I need to emphasize this more, or I need to do this differently, or why are these kids running into these issues, or why are these kids having success? Like, kind of talk about that if you don't mind.
I think for me, you know, I have an ego just like every other coach in America, and I want to. Yeah, I know, it's shocking. Spoiler alert. You know, but it was probably in around 2007 to 2010 or so. You know, we were working hard. We were having a little bit of success, but we just couldn't get over the hump. You know, on the field, and I went around and studied some of the better programs in our area and out of the state, and kind of came back and went, all right, so these guys are all football secondary to life for these programs, right? Their emphasis is on character development. Their emphasis is on values. Their emphasis is on you know, taking care of each other. It's not about winning. And so when we kind of turned that table or that view and made winning secondary and taking care of kids and building relationships as the primary, we took off, right? Our program, I felt as the leader of our program that I needed to get that message out to our coaches, our players, our parents, our community, our administration. Hey, we have a mission and this is it. And we have a vision for the program and this is it. And we shared that out, because I think if you have a mission and a vision and you don't share it out, you're never going to get there, because you can't do it by yourself. You have to encapsulate yourself with people who are like-minded and want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And so watching those kids, not that we didn't have impact on kids prior to that point, we certainly did, but it might have been more specific situations where you know, as a coach, where there's some kids you just click with or you have a better bond with than other kids for whatever reason. Those things were happening. But I think more collectively, as we've shifted over the last 10 years or so, it's a bigger deal. I think we see our kids going out into the world and being better human beings, hopefully. And I keep in touch with a fair amount of them, and so do a lot of the guys on my coaching staff. They keep in touch, and you can see it in their everyday lives. I mean, they're lawyers, they're policemen, they're doctors, they're, you know, teachers, they're making an impact in their communities.
Yeah. And three state championships in the last handful of years. So that's always interesting too, because you're like, okay, now we're like getting over the finish line in terms of the goals we set out. Mission, vision, core values. A lot of people create these, a lot of companies, a lot of programs. I think the good programs do a good job at reinforcing them consistently. How do you, sounds like you have a mission and vision for your program that you've developed, as a staff or individually or as a team. How does it play out day to day reinforcing these? What does that look like?
Well, I think it goes back to our core values. So for us, we have an acronym called CRAFTED. So on the back of our shirts, they were on their championship rings this year. And basically what it boils down to is C stands for compete. We want kids to compete at everything that they do. I don't care if they're playing tic-tac-toe. Let's compete. Let's compete in the classroom. Let's compete socially in terms of how we can better the community that we're in. Let's compete all the time. I think that when they learn that competing puts you in situations where you're uncomfortable, that's a good thing, right? Growth comes out of that uncomfortable situation. Second on that is relationships, okay? And we've talked about that. So how do we do things within relationships building? We do a stupid thing. It's not stupid, but we do this little thing at the end of practice. We call it a 3-2-1. Everybody get a 3-2-1 on the way out. Now, how it's going to work in COVID, I'm not sure, but we'll figure it out. It's 3 handshakes, okay, 2 hugs, 1 compliment before you get off the field. You got to seek somebody out, and you can't just be your 3 boys that you're always with. You got to go seek out other people, could be coaches or whatever. And it's just, there's a physical connection there, and the ability for me to say, hey man, you did a great job today, or hey, I really like the way you worked. All of a sudden those walls start to come down, right? Now all of a sudden you can have a deeper conversation. A is about accountability. We have to be accountable to each other in everything we do. And it goes back to, are you being accountable in the classroom? Are you being accountable socially? Are you being accountable at home? Certainly, are you being accountable to get to the weight room and do your best on the field? So when there's mutual accountability, great things can happen and growth can happen. Finish is the F in crafted. We want to finish everything we do, right? And again, it goes back. Finish the conversation, right? Open your ears and finish the conversation. Finish the drill. Finish your homework. Finish your meal. Whatever it is, right? Then the T is toughness. And I think I heard Randy Jackson, who's the head coach at Forney High School in Dallas. He's a big culture guy. He's got 2 books out, Culture Beats or Defeat Strategy. But I heard him talk, and he talked about how he felt that tough people win in life. Well, there's no more evidence right now than if you know how to be tough, okay, in our culture right now, and take that for whatever it means. If you have some intestinal fortitude, some toughness to work your way through the hard conversations, the hard moments in your life, there is reward on the other end of that, right? So we want to, it's not just about being physically tough. Sure, in football, there's something to that, but it's the toughness, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual toughness to work your way through a hard time. Finally, the E is about execution. And again, it goes back. Are you executing what you're supposed to do, right? On the field, off the field, right? And then the last one is dedication. And for us, it's an all-in mentality. And we end our practice with a 3-2-1, and then we end it with a phrase that we say, the question is, how are we going to do it? And they all respond together, count on me. And then that's the dedication piece of it. I know that you're going to be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. And when we do that, I think that we talk about these things throughout the off season. We talk about them in season during the weeks. Our kids, to earn their helmet decals, they have to be able to define. There's definitions to each of these words that mean something to our program. They have to write it out and define it. And I'd say, hey, please be the guy that doesn't have a helmet decal when we get out to the first game. Please be that guy, and so far no one's been that guy. So that's good.
Wow, man. It's really inspiring stuff. Like a lot of those hit me for sure. The 3-2-1 is really significant. I haven't heard. You've seen some cool stuff before, and how people break, or De La Salle, which is the program that's close to
Mm-hmm.
our company because we have multiple guys who coach there and work for our company. They do these commitment cards, and we actually did them when I was in high school the night before the game, and that was a really powerful exercise. And I'm just always fascinated by coaches who can motivate and inspire and discipline 15 to 17-year-old kids, because I think it's super, super difficult.
Right.
And there's a lot of coaches who do it poorly, and they just yell, or they just do fear tactic stuff. And so if you can do something in a positive way, like y'all have done, I think it's great. I'm interested. How did you create the crafted phrase with those different words?
It's so like most programs, probably we have a leadership council, and I had ripped through Coach Jackson's first book on culture defeat strategy. I consider myself a fairly avid reader, but I don't usually sit down and finish books in one sitting. I finished his book in one sitting.
Oh, wow.
And I actually ended up calling him that afternoon and talking with him and kind of picked his brain. And this is something he does. So anyway, so we have this big brainstorm session with our leadership council, and said, all right, give me all the words that you can think of that when you think about culture, when you think about what's important to you as a player, as a student, da, da, da. So we threw all these things up on the board, and then we kind of categorized it, right? We know this word and this word kind of go together, da, da, da. And we boiled it down to these words, right? So one of my seniors, who's really a smart kid, and these weren't in that order on the whiteboard, right? And he's looking, he's like, hey, coach, that spells crafted. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I said, so what do you guys think about the tagline of crafted for greatness? And they were like, oh yeah, that's awesome. I'm like, okay, so we're going to be crafted individuals. We're crafted in the image of God. And so we're going to be crafted on the field and as students and in our community. We're not perfect, don't get me wrong. We have plenty of missteps and all that stuff, but at the core, that's what our program is. And I think it's defined now, right, with these core values. I think that's what we were heading for in 2010 or so, but we didn't have a definition for it, and now it's got some structure.
Yeah, it sounds like you've empowered your players well, and good leaders, I think, empower and build up other leaders. They don't just call all the shots. They don't just say, hey, here are our core values.
Right.
They empower the kids, especially in a high school football context, to put their own words into it. And that's awesome how the senior was the one who figured out the acronym. That's so cool.
I think it's, one of those things I tell our kids all the time. This is not my team. This is your team. I just simply get to talk to the media and, set practice schedules and stuff. But you guys are going to do what you decide to do. It'll never be that team's just, way more talented than us. We played St. John Bosco. They were more talented than us. We played Eastside Catholic. They were more talented than us. Yeah. Okay. It happens sometimes. But on a given night in a state, most programs are pretty equal. So what's going to set you apart, and giving the power back to the kids and teaching them how to be an advocate for themselves. We tell our kids all the time, force us to play you. If I could play 50 kids on a Friday night, I will play 50 kids. But you have to force us to play you. Be so great in practice, in your drills, understanding in the weight room, all that stuff. And through that, forcing us to play you, you're learning lessons that'll carry on in life. And honestly, we probably play a lot more people, and we're not a big school, but we'll play a ton of kids on a Friday night because we value it.
Well, we'll get into some 2-minute drill and some chalk talk, but thanks for sharing that about culture and building relationships. I think that's all really strong stuff. What do you, as a coach, we talk about legacy a lot of times with coaches, or what are you going to leave with the program? And I know you're not done yet, but if you were to look at yourself and maybe someone else's eyes, what do you want people to say about you as a coach, as a person, when it's all said and done?
Well, I hope I'm people would say that treated people fairly and, showed them love and respect and challenged them to be better at something. If I've done that, my walk on this earth has been just fine. And again, I haven't hit that mark with every single kid. I get that, but I think I have enough of them that I say, well, we, meaning me and my coaching staff, and are making an impact on kids' lives. So that's what I would prefer, and I would prefer that whether I won a state championship or not. That's just gravy. It's fun. It's exciting, but it's not why we're in it.
Yeah. Actually made me think of something. Coaches, especially with high school kids, like you could make sure you are always right? Like you could always position yourself. And I've seen many coaches do it. Like you talked about, hey, we all have an ego. True. We all do. Every human does. Football coaches can have quite an ego and have a hard time admitting like, hey, I'm not perfect all the time, which you've already been able to do during this time. I'm intrigued. Like if you look back or if you think back to like, man, I didn't handle that the best way. Or that wasn't the best exit with a kid. Like, can you think of situations where you as a coach have had to be like, hey, you know what? We didn't do this right, and we're going to do it right the next time, or we're going to make this right.
Yeah, I think there's probably a myriad of them along the way. Some ways I've handled discipline, maybe playing time, or whatever the case might be. I think that coaches are not infallible, right? But we are held to such a high standard, especially on Friday nights or Saturdays or Sundays. And there's always somebody who's got a better answer than you do, but they're not willing to, spend their entire weekend away from their family and, stay up late and watch film and grade film and, pour their life's work into this thing and do what they feel is the best thing at that time. I don't know. It's rewarding, but it's, as it's just, everyone's got an opinion and that's okay. I've grown to the point where my skin is so thick. I'm going to recognize if I've done something wrong or if I've mistreated a person, I will be the first to own it. I don't know that I was that way when I was younger. I was always, deflecting and like, well, if they would have done this, then this wouldn't have happened, But I gotta own my stuff, right? And if I can teach kids and my other coaches to own their stuff, we may not like the consequence, but we're gonna move past it and we're gonna learn from it, and maybe laugh about it one day, even.
Yeah, that would be nice to have a little bit of levity when it's all said and done.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, some fun stuff, and then we'll get into some football because that's what we like here. Portland. Maybe like your top 2 or 3, if you're given a travel guide to the city of Portland, what do we have to do? What's on the to-do list?
Well, I think I would go to the Rose Garden, not the Moda Center, the actual Rose Garden that's up in Washington Park. I would recommend the zoo. I think our zoo is fantastic, even though I'm not a frequent attender to the zoo. And then I would say spend a day walking around downtown and seeing the historic, sites of the Broadway Street and, the waterfront, the East Waterfront, and the East Side Esplanade, and OMSI is a really cool place to go. And the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, it was an awesome place. And there's so many kind of just fun things to do here. And if I was really being honest, I'd say drive 3 hours to Central Oregon and go to Bend, where you can do, if you golf, that's golf heaven. If you like outdoor recreations, floating the rivers, fishing, hunting, that kind of stuff, mountain biking, Bend is a beautiful, beautiful area.
Yeah, we have friends that just moved there, and a lot of people have moved there because it is so beautiful. What have you done that I should do?
Go to a Rose Bowl. I've been lucky enough to be to 2 of them. This past season, we had from our program 6 young men participating in the Rose Bowl, 5 as players. And then my son was on the equipment staff at Oregon he was a senior. Brady Breeze, who was the Rose Bowl MVP, is one of our players. So that experience for me, even the second time through, was so awesome. I would also say, and I'm a Notre Dame honk. I love Notre Dame. I made my pilgrimage back there this last year to see Stanford play, because we had a young man who was playing at Stanford. And so I finally walked on the hallowed grounds, and being a coach, I was able to maneuver myself into the tour before the game with the recruits and into the locker room, and thinking like, oh my gosh, Rockney stood here, and Lou Holtz and Leahy and dot, and then walk out on the middle of the field. And so that was, if you could ever do that, I would highly recommend that as well.
That's awesome. We lived in Pasadena, my wife and I, we got engaged in the City of Roses. Then we lived in the City of Roses, because Pasadena is another one.
Yeah.
I coached at a school in LA, and we played our rivalry game against Pasadena High School at the Rose Bowl every year, which was a really cool experience. And then we went to the national championship when Jameis Winston played Auburn, and that was a fun experience. I haven't been to a Rose Bowl, but I've been to the Rose Bowl.
Yes.
And it's a spectacular place. And we got some Notre Dame Fighting Irish guys on our team too, who are going to like to hear that. Couple more. Favorite song or artist you're listening to?
I'm going to, I don't know why I'm embarrassed. I'm a huge Justin Timberlake fan. Huge.
Let's go. I love Justin
Timberlake. I've seen him in concert a couple times. I can flip him on Pandora or Spotify and just be in a happy place. Guy's multi-talented. I just really enjoy him. And I grew up, I was younger in the days of NSYNC, so I remember all that stuff, and that's probably my go-to. The other thing for me is I'm a big podcast listener as well. So there's a great podcast by Michael Ian Black called How to Be Amazing. And it's he talks to all these different people from different walks of life, and kind of dives in, and I would recommend How to Be Amazing. It's a great podcast.
Cool. I'll earmark that one. Favorite part of a Friday night or a game day?
I think, pregame, kind of sizing up the opponent, talking to your opposing coach, watching the look in your kid's eyes. Again, I've been doing this long enough to know that my coaches will tell you I could come back in the locker room and say, hey, we're going to be good tonight, or hey, it's going to be a long night, fellas. So we gotta be extra special as coaches tonight to get our kids where they need to be. But I just love the atmosphere of Friday nights. And, Oregon's not a hotbed by any stretch of football in the country, but there are some really cool atmospheres in our state. Sherwood High School is an amazing atmosphere. Jesuit High School is amazing atmosphere. The Medford, South and North Medford, one of the most iconic stadiums on the West Coast, in Spiegelberg Stadium. So there's just some really cool places to play football here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Let's get into some mesh. I know you're going to take us through some Florida concept. So if you want to share your screen down there at the bottom, we'll get into this.
So here is our, we call it Florida. Every pass play, vertical pass concept in our offense is state driven. We're a concept team. We're not necessarily we do have a route tree, but we're not going to call this, 757 be shallow or something like that. We're just going to call this Florida. And for us, this is Florida even. And that means that the primary side's on the right side of the formation, and the secondary side's on the left side of the formation. So for us, Florida starts with a post to the play side call. So even is right for us. So we're going to get a post out of number 1, out of the Z. And then we're going to tag the second receiver with a route concept. It can be Y dig, Y split. We could split the safeties or split the middle of the field. We could go Y out, whatever the case might be. Then on the backside, that tells the first inside receiver, he's got the shallow route. And when we coach that, we're talking about, we want to run that at the heels of the defensive linemen where they are pre-snap, and we're not going to climb until we get past the formation, and we're never going to climb over 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. And then we're going to get a post out of the backside receiver. So you'll see on the diagram here that we have MOFC, which means that's the side we're working if the middle of the field is closed. If it's MOFO, we're going to work this side. And we communicate kind of what side of the field we want to work to our quarterbacks pre-snap, but they're ultimately responsible for, seeing the rotation of the defense and so forth. You'll also see on this thing, we're an R4 system. Dub Maddox out of Oklahoma has 3 books and a bunch of videos on the R4 system. And it's just a universal language for us. So our quarterbacks and our receivers understand that where in the process they are. So the rhythm, he's the guy that we want to get the ball to if we can, based on what the defense is doing. If the rhythm's not there, and that's off the top of the quarterback's drop, it's a hot read, for lack of a better term. And then we're going to go to our read, which if the middle of the field's open on the right side there, it's going to be the post. And then we're going to come down to the rush, which is the shallow. And then if the middle of the field is closed, the rhythm always stays the same. So we're going to hit the Y if he's open. If not, we're going to come to the backside post to the tailback who's sneaking out in the flat there. So this is it out of 2x2, and let me sneak forward here to it out of 3x1. So here it is out of 3x1. So basically all we've done here is exchange the responsibilities of the 2 inside receivers. So now we're going to get the double post on the outside. We're going to tag our B with a route, right? So whatever tag route we have is our rhythm route. And then that exchanges the responsibility for the 3rd receiver to the call side, or from the call side to the shallow. So again, middle of the field open, we're working this side. Middle of the field closed, we're working this side. And it's been a really good concept for us. It's a home run concept built in with some layers. And like I said, this is an adaptation of the air raid, Hal Mummy, Mike Leach mesh concept. But we don't necessarily have to have a mesh to get the concept dialed in. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Out of 2x2 and 3x1, you could run this out of just about any formation. It's just what we tell our kids all the time. Your routes are usually the same, but your launch points might be different. So where are you launching from? And then how does that adjust the depth and angles that you have to take on your route? So I'll pull up a little film here, just a few clips of it. So this is Florida. And again, what we talk to our kids about with the R4 system, and Dub talks about winning route side space back. And sometimes you know where you want to be at the end of a route, and sometimes there's somebody in your way. So how do you win route side space back? And that means you might snap your route off, or you might adjust your route to the open area. And that happens in a couple of these clips. So they're not exactly what was drawn on the card, but I have yet to draw something up on a card that actually looked like it, looked like that on the field. So here we go. So the first look he has is the Y coming out of the tight end spot here. So that's his rhythm. So he gets to the top of his drop. If the route side space is open, he's going to take it. So he should see now that his route side space over here is open, and he should be delivering the ball to that guy, and which he does, and we get a nice little gain, right? So just 1, 2, 3 rhythm, throw it out. He might have even been a little late on it, but that's, I don't play quarterback, so whatever you need to do to get the job done. So here, same concept, but we talked about winning route side space back. So you'll see the Z receiver here. He's got a guy that's capping his route right now, or what the definition is capping the route. Okay, so that guy's taking away his route side space. Okay, so he has to either dig across, but he knows that he's going to have another receiver inside. So maybe it doesn't make sense to snap that route off across the formation. But where the area that he can win route side space back is on the outside. here against it's a 3 shell, but it's really a 2 shell it's like a pre-snap Tampa 2, if you will. So you'll see this. Quarterback goes to his rhythm. Middle of the field's closed, so he goes to his read, and the receiver does a great job of winning outside space back against what he's seeing, and we get a big gain right before the half here. Okay, so again, the other thing that the R4 does for us is it allows our quarterback to speed up a little bit, right? So here we have this receiver, what we call our B, is tagged with a dig. Okay, so he sees by the time he gets to the top of his drop, this defender has capped his route. Okay, he also has seen by the top of his drop that these guys are bailing hard, okay, over the top. So he's probably not going to have this rhythm or this read. So he's going to dump it down to his rush almost immediately for a significant chunk of change, nearly a first down, if not a first down. So building this R4 system into everything that we're doing has really helped us speed up our process and helped our receivers get to where they need to get to on time. So the other thing that we can do here now, a part of the R4 system is what's called the hard deck, and that's for us with this group. It was at 10 yards, so every single person on the defense is within 10 yards of the ball. So our quarterback has the wherewithal and has been coached that, hey, if we get everybody below the hard deck, you might be able to hit the rhythm, but that means that they're probably bringing somebody. So you might as well take a chance over the top because there's no safety help. And that happens in the next couple clips. So we get pressure and we get one-on-one coverage. Now it helps that the young man that just caught the ball there is going to Stanford. That doesn't hurt, okay? But the concept is still solid, right? There's no safety help, so let's take advantage of what we're seeing. Very similar here. We get one guy above the hard deck, really, in the safety, but he's shading. Okay, so we think this is some kind of a man concept, or they're trying to double somebody over here based on pre-snap alignment. So quarterback sees it and says, "Hey, I've got all this green space to work with. I can forego the dig. It's capped anyway, so I'm just going to put it up to this guy." And that safety was so far over, okay, and then hesitates on the dig just a little bit. See the safety just chatter his feet there. That gives you enough room to throw this post in and let the big dogs roll a little bit. Okay, I think this is the last one. Okay, same thing here. So we get a 4 shell, but we knew this team was going to be a high pressure 0 team. So you'll see that the route side space out of the dig here is taken away as undercut, and the safety comes down on top of it. So that means there's no safety help over the top. So we take advantage of it. Good
Throw
ball.
Throw it to Stanford.
Throw it to Stanford. Yep. But it's a pretty decent throw by a kid here. Yeah. Steps up and puts it right on stride. So I think that's, that was the last clip, Coach. So
cool.
I'll stop my share.
Yeah.
So that's,
I like it, man.
It's been good for us. It's not the only thing we do, obviously, but it's a great way to have some vertical stretch and some horizontal stretch on a single play.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing, Coach Pyne. I like to see some Stanford Pac-12 guys coming from the state of Oregon. We can use some help down here. A lot of our recruits are heading to other places, but I think it's a good concept that I think a lot of people could install if they haven't already, and some quality footage there. So thanks for opening up the huddle. I know it's a dicey thing as a coach sometimes. We gotta...
do. I have that argument with my coaches all the time. Like, listen, they might know what we're doing, but if we're better at it than they are defending it, then who cares if they know what we're doing? I mean, we're people trying to pick up our signals. We're no huddle team, so they're trying to steal on whatever. Just go play. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining. I know that it's been really, really unique to see football all across the country at the highest level, in terms of high school programs winning state championships, and impressed with your program, impressed with your leadership, and Best of luck in 2020. Hope you guys go back to back, and I hope there's fans in the stands for it. But thanks for joining.
I appreciate it. I told our coaches if we don't play a season, that automatically means we're back-to-back state champions. So we'll see. Appreciate you having me on.